Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into today's Author Talk series brought to you by the Library Speakers Consortium. The Library Speakers Consortium is a partnership of more than 400 library systems across the US, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia with the goal of making Author Talks more accessible to communities of all sizes. I am Brandon Adler, your host and moderator in conversation with all of the amazing authors you will hear from throughout our series. Today, I am super excited to be here with New York Times bestselling author and queen of twists and thrill, Freida McFadden, as she talks to us about her Housemaid series and introduces us to the newest installment, which came out on Tuesday, The Housemaid Is Watching. I'm sure you get that if you haven't gotten it yet. I know everybody is really excited to dive in, but before we do that, let me pause and give you all the standard housekeeping information that keeps everything running smoothly. We have compiled some questions that were pre-submitted with registration, so if you did that, thank you. But be aware you can continue to submit questions during the talk by clicking the questions button that's below the live stream video. If you've already put the screen into full screen mode, just hit escape and you'll see that questions button that's below the live stream video. Keep in mind, there are a lot of you tuning in, so we will get to as many questions as time allows. And don't worry, if you have to leave early for any reason whatsoever, all registrants will receive a link to the recording in about 24 hours. Now, to formally introduce our guest for today. #1 New York Times, Amazon Charts, USA Today, Wall Street Journal, Sunday Times, and Publishers Weekly bestselling author Freida McFadden is a practicing physician specializing in brain injury who has penned multiple best-selling psychological thrillers and medical humor novels. Freida's work has been selected as one of Amazon Editor's Best Books of the Year. She is the winner of the International Thriller Writers Award for Best Paperback, and she is a Goodreads Choice Award winner. Her novels have been translated into over 30 languages. Freida lives with her family and black cat in a centuries-old 3-story home overlooking the ocean with staircases that creak and moan with each step, and nobody could hear you if you scream, unless you scream really loudly, maybe. Welcome, Freida. Thank you so much for being here. How are you this evening?
Good. How are you?
I am doing very well. Thank you. I'm doing better now that we are kicking off this conversation. Yeah, I'm super excited too, especially since your new book came out this week and I got to devour that. We're not gonna do any spoilers. So if you
no spoilers.
So if you haven't read the series yet, this will be a great introduction to the series, and then we'll get to learn a little bit about the new book as well. I do want to jump off with Cynthia's question. Cynthia from Chesterfield County Public Library just has to know if you have a housemaid at home.
Do I have a housemaid? I you know what? The term housemaid, I have to say, is not one that we use in this country that much. But I have a British publisher, so when they came up with the title housemaid, I was kind of like, what is that? Like more like housekeeper, or so I do have a cleaning person who I absolutely adore. She actually used to babysit my children, and then the children got too old and we just could not separate from each other. So now she comes to help clean, and she's amazing.
I'm sure Cynthia wanted to know if there were any secrets that you were hiding, but we will move on. So as I was doing some research for this event, I came across this quote from a Goodreads review from a reader named Spring, and I don't know, it just made me laugh out loud. And it just said very simply, "I want to read about Millie being a badass till she turns 80. I don't care."
would actually enjoy writing that, because this newest book had a time jump, and it was like kind of a big time jump. It was like 17 years. So I can imagine like now a 30-year time jump, and she's 80, and like something happens at the retirement home. So maybe.
We're watching you write a book right now. Okay, so I guess to kick us off then for the Housemaid universe, the Housemaid series, can you kind of give us a quick introduction to the Housemaid universe?
So, I mean, the first book started, I was just envisioning a housemaid. not using the word housemaid, but somebody coming to work for a family, and just having like a horrible experience. The family is just, especially the wife, is just horrible to her. And you don't quite know why. Like, she's being gaslit. She's just being given all these horrible chores to do. And it's just the worst experience. And the question is, like, why is it so bad? And like, should she quit? Like, she makes some bad decisions. Like, I know a lot of people reading it were like, I would have quit in that situation. But she does not quit. That wouldn't have been an interesting story.
No, we wouldn't have book 3 at this point either if she,
That's right.
if she quit.
The housemaid quit and moved on to some other job.
The end.
A waitress, maybe.
So The Housemaid Is Watching is the 3rd installment, and it's this continuation of Millie's storyline. So what inspired you to stay with Millie for so long? And in particular, Amanda from Bucks County Free Library wants to know, what inspired you to make this a trilogy? Is it going to stay that way?
I wasn't initially thinking trilogy. I wasn't even initially thinking sequel. Like, my editor at Book Couture, my publisher, was like, I could see this being a second book. And I was like, no, come on. It will never be a second book. This is it. Because I never do sequels of my thrillers. I feel like a sequel is kind of like a spoiler, because if it continues, they survive, you kind of give some stuff away. So I almost never do sequels. So I was like, no way. But the book was so popular, and hearing all the feedback about it, and the epilogue kind of left the door open. So I was like, okay, I have an idea. I'll do one more, but that's it. And I remember I gave it to my editor, and after she read it, she was like, and now you could do a third one. I was like, come on, that is never going to happen. So I don't know. I'm not, I don't know myself clearly. I can be talked into anything. I think it's a girl.
Well, I think that you just wrote book 4 in the nursing home. So
yes. So now I have to write that. I kind of like the idea of it. I haven't had any elderly as I get older. Feels closer to home.
Maybe from now on, Millie should just age with you. So like
exactly.
5 years.
Yeah, like another 20 years, maybe I'll be ready.
So how did the character of Millie come about? Shakia from Roxbury Library and Marsha want to know, how did you come up with her? Was Millie something that you were playing with this whole time, or how did that happen?
I think all my characters are just like slightly based on me. Okay. Like, just, I think, my first book, The Devil Wears Scrubs, is about, that one was really based on me. It was about my intern year and about like kind of being tormented by my senior resident, who is like, Nina-esque. And, I love kind of writing that. Like, I've been in the situation of being tormented by somebody in charge of me. And I love kind of writing that situation where like somebody's just so awful to you, and you're like, you don't even know why. There's nothing you can do, because they're the boss of you. What can you do? Yeah. So like, she, in this book, she didn't have a lot of options. So she had to stay with the job. She was living in her car at the beginning of the book. So this is like the only job she could get. And so that was why she stayed in this terrible job. And, reason I stayed in my terrible job was, when you're a resident, you can't quit. You're stuck. So
you had to get through it.
Just gotta stick it out. So I certainly, I feel that, I've been there.
Yeah. So with I keep saying so, sorry. I realize that's my transition statement. With this book, it just came out this week. I know, like I said, and we know that many viewers haven't had a chance to completely read it yet. So what can readers look forward to with this installment?
It's just sort of turning, I didn't want to write the same book a third time. I wanted to be different. And that's why I did the time jump. And I wanted it to kind of, and I listened to what readers loved about the first two books. And I kind of wanted to just give them that and put a bow on it. I saw one, I don't know if it was a TikTok or a review, or somebody said, like, Freida clearly wrote this for her readers, like, kind of as a reward. So I think, you know, the people who are huge fans, like, will really get what I was trying to do with it. And, you know, hopefully it's a good story to anyone. But, you know, I was really just trying to give people who love the series, like, a happy ending to everything.
Mm-hmm.
I love happy endings. That's not a spoiler. Like, you always get a happy ending with me.
So have you always enjoyed writing thrillers? Barbara says, I once read in another interview that you didn't start in the thriller genre. So can you talk about your journey a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I have and I haven't, because, like, I've been writing since I was 9 years old. So, and I was writing, like, thrillers intermittently since then, because I've always loved to read them. Like, I was like 10 or 11 when I started reading Mary Higgins Clark, and I would read Robin Cook. Those were my favorites. And, you know, that would make me want to write them. Of course, they were terrible because I was like 12. But so I'd write them intermittently. But when I started publishing, it just seemed scary to write a thriller. It seemed, you know, you really got to have a solid plot, and it's really got to come together. And so I was more comfortable writing something else. So I wrote, you know, The Devil Wears Scrubs, which is a women's fiction book, and it was based on a lot of my experiences. And my earliest thrillers were, I think, almost kind of bridging between women's fiction and thrillers, sort of like baby thrillers. And I think, you know, I think I have a women's fiction vibe a little bit in them. I still think they're thrillers more for women, but men love them too. So some men, not my husband, but other men.
Well, Millie definitely gives that vibe as that protagonist. She's always protecting a woman.
Yeah.
And there've been quite a few comments about how much people love Millie, but how naive she can be. And I noticed that you said a lot that Millie is kind of based on you a little bit. Do you think that you are naive?
Yeah, a bit. I mean, I've certainly done some stupid things.
Haven't we all?
Yeah, like I remember, you know, once I got off the airport, I was like 22, and some guy came over to me and he's like, "You need a cab?" And I like just went with him. And, like, I was just like this random guy, and I was like walking with him and thinking, like, I don't know who this is. He's not in the cab line. This is not good. And yet I just kept going. I just followed him. And I was scared, but I felt like I couldn't leave this situation. Like, I was too invested, even though I was still in the airport. So, and he didn't kill me. He actually took me to my final destination without a bed. But I certainly,
I'm so happy.
I see how people can make stupid decisions. And, you know, I think in these books, the characters kind of have to make stupid decisions. Like, unfortunately, I think, you know, if you're reading a police procedural, okay, you know, you can have a protagonist who's smart and does all the right things. But in most of these thrillers, like, if you were smart, you just call the police, and that would just be the end of it. Like, the police would just be handling it. So I feel like for you to kind of be as involved in the story as you are, you probably have to make some stupid decisions. So that's my theory on that.
I agree with that. And there's also that kind of, you know, buried character in all of us that's like, well, I can take care of myself, and maybe I would investigate this myself. And then you would get scared and call the police. But
as I get older, I probably would less investigate myself.
Agreed. What is that about anyway? As you get older, you're like way more protective of yourself.
Home version of me. Definitely not calling the police.
So who's your favorite character from the Housemaid series?
I think I love Cecilia because I kind of based her on my younger daughter, and my daughter actually read The Housemaid recently, and she's so amused by how much of herself is in the character. Like she's like, I did this and I did that. It's like, and there are a couple of books where I base the character on her, and she gets such a kick out of it. Like seeing things that she said to me, like the school lunch was like 5 ravioli, and that's the entire lunch. And she's like, "This happened to me, Mom." I'm like, "Yeah," and it made it into the book. That was in another book, but.
So Kelsey is asking, Kelsey from Roxbury Library, you have a theme of a stated sandwich in most of in most books. What's your family sandwich? It was bologna, like in Never Lie. Is it plain turkey, like in Do Not Disturb? I love your work. I've read them all, and you're amazing.
Well, if you really want to know, like my personal favorite sandwich, like we all have different sandwiches. So my husband will only eat turkey. My younger daughter will only eat ham on a tortilla with shredded cheese on it. And then after it's been microwaved for 30 seconds, she puts mayo on it. So that's her favorite. It's disgusting. And I love a portobello mushroom sandwich. Very good at making it. When I bring it to work, everybody's jealous. So my teenager just like grabs something from Whole Foods. You can't. Nothing I make is good enough.
Christy from Salinas Public Library says, do you think that psychological thrillers are cautionary, or can they produce unnecessary anxiety?
I mean, they don't make me anxious. I think because I was saying this to someone once. I've never read a psychological thriller and thought to myself, this could really happen. Like they just seem so like they're not realistic, really. I mean, parts of them, maybe, but I recently started listening to true crime podcasts, and I could read any thriller, but these true crime podcasts, I just had to stop. I was like really upsetting me. So that was like, I think I got like 50% of the way into one of them, and I was like, nope, sorry.
Yeah, that's definitely, I'm the exact same there. True crime gives me complete anxiety, especially if there are children involved. I can't listen to
exactly the wrong one.
Yeah. But I know that psychological thrillers are fiction. So really. Yeah, I agree with that. Brandy from Roxbury Library is asking, what is the connection between items that appear in multiple books? For example, snowflake necklace, pompous chair, etc.
I mean, the real answer is I just forgot I put it in one of the books, and then I use it again. Like in college, one of my friends had this amazing papasan chair, and it just like stuck in my head, I guess, as an awesome chair. I only remember using it once, but if you say I've done it more than once, I will believe that. And the snowflake necklace, same thing. I have a snowflake necklace, and I was unawares that I used it in more than one book. Because I write them, what happens is I write these books years apart, especially like, when I publish a book, I may have written it years and years before. And everybody reads them all in like 2 weeks. So they see all these things. I use the same character name in 2 books, like not even like first and last name, and just totally unaware.
You had a question about that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it does seem like you write them back to back to back to back. We did have a question about, could you write any faster, please? I need more. But it already seems like you write them so quickly. But that's just the speed of the publishing process.
I mean, I can write quickly. Like what my process is like, I usually get an idea and I think about the idea like all the time as I'm preparing to write it. Like, when I'm taking walks, when I'm cooking food, as I'm falling asleep at night, in the shower is the best place to get ideas. If I am stuck on something, all I need to do is take a shower. Solved.
Okay.
So, but yeah, but the actual writing itself, because I plan it so much in my head, it can go very quickly depending on, how well it goes. So that I can, do anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, but then editing can take, months on top of that. So like all in all, it's not super quick, but the actual writing itself is probably the fastest part.
Mm-hmm. Heidi from Bossier Parish Library wants to know, do you have any rituals or routines that help you write? I guess other than the shower.
Not really. Like I just, I usually write in my living room and, hopefully with no one else around. I do like, to kind of be alone when I'm writing. Although when my kids were little, I would definitely write with them in the room. There was no way out of that. But now that everybody is a little bit more self-sufficient, I too try to get that alone time.
Well, that's why you put a name in 2 books, is because you were distracted by.
I was very distracted. I have no idea what I wrote like back in 2018 or 19. It's all a blur of, baby food and.
Yeah, I seriously don't remember. When people ask me what I did last weekend, I have a toddler and I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Not slept, that's for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Ashley is asking, when you have an idea for a new book, do you instantly start writing, or do you have a full plot and timeline mapped out before you start writing anything?
Oh yeah. If I never start writing right away. Like it's, as I was saying, I think about it for, months to a year. I can have an idea like percolating in my head before I write anything. And sometimes there's just some detail I haven't quite worked out. And I just want to wait for that last piece to fall in place.
So you're not even like outlining and organizing. You're just keeping it up in your head.
My brain.
Oh, wow.
I don't do it, put it on paper because I feel like that locks you in. Like I can't, if I do that, I feel like I can't change anything. Like it's all, set in stone then, which I don't like. I like to be able, if a character is calling to me in some way or, something. And sometimes I don't quite have the ending right. And as I'm writing, it will all come clear to me as I get to know the characters better.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of ending, we do have a lot of questions about what comes first, the storyline or the twist. Do you know the twist when you start? I mean, it sounds like you do, because you said you don't start writing until you have everything worked out. So
yeah, I would never start writing before I know the twist. And there have been a few times when I started writing and I realized the twist was not coming together as I wanted it to.
Okay.
And that was trouble. Like I had to kind of stop and rethink and sometimes just put the story down because I could tell it wasn't coming together. So the twist is, sometimes I'll have an idea and I don't have the twist and I'll just put the idea aside and I'll think, okay, if it comes to me, then I can start writing it. But I will never, ever start writing without the twist in mind. Because for me, I feel like writing is like creating a puzzle for another person to solve. And I have to know the solution to the puzzle in order to create the puzzle. So I can't write without knowing it in advance.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Erica from Central Arkansas Library System is asking, how do you balance leaving breadcrumbs for readers versus red herrings versus giving away the end too early?
It's hard. I really have to think about how I want to portion things out. I definitely always have a couple of alternate conclusions that I want the reader to come to. And I try to misdirect people. Somebody once said in a review that I was really good at misdirection. I took that as a major compliment. And I love doing it. I love writing little tidbits that I think will take readers in a different direction and make them think they figured it out, that they've outsmarted me and they know what it is. And it's really fun for me to think I'm gonna trick them, So it's like a game that I'm playing where I'm trying trying to trick the reader with some success, some less success.
So
I try my best.
Oh, well, I think that you've tricked us all enough to hook us. I mean, we can't get enough. So
I hope.
Holly is asking about research, and I have some interesting questions about research in general. Some people asking, do you use your own medical experience as research? And Holly wants to know, how do you research topics such as violence and death and dying and killing techniques? They seem so accurate in your books.
Oh, my light went off. Sorry.
Well,
Yeah, so definitely medical stuff is very comfortable for me. Anytime anything medical comes up, I don't have to do as much research because it's just stuff I know. And it actually makes me realize like that no amount of research can kind of compensate for like real life experience. Like I recently read a book where the person did an amazing job researching medical stuff. Like I really was very impressed by it, but there were one or two very, very slight details where I could just tell this person is not a physician or a nurse. Like they don't actually work in this field. Mm-hmm. And I don't think anyone else would have picked it up because it was immaculately researched. So, I now like, because, I'm trying to stretch out of my comfort zone. I do try to like talk to actual people, not just Google, although I do a lot of Googling. My history would get me in so much trouble. So, I'll talk to, I have an online person who's a police officer, and he's like, ask me any questions you want. So I was recently picking his brain about an upcoming book, and he, gave me a ton of options. I also, my agent helped me find this lawyer who I asked a bunch of questions to about some legal matters to make sure that was accurate. Mm-hmm. When I wrote The Inmate, I do have some experience caring for prisoners, but because I worked at a county hospital and we did have a lot of prisoners there, but I wasn't within the prison. So I talked to somebody who was a PA who worked at a prison, and just about that experience. So I try to make it at least factually accurate. Like I know that there are times when I have to take a little poetic license just to make the story work. And like, I'm accepting of that in other books, and I hope people are accepting of mine, but I try where I can to make it as accurate as I can.
Mm-hmm. It feels accurate. I mean, I'm not a medical professional or have done any of those things, but you definitely bring people into the story. So I think that's the goal, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tina in Australia is asking, at what point in the writing process do you envision what your characters look like? You've said that they're based on people you know. Are any of them based on Hollywood stars or just new humans with features? At what point in the writing process do you envision? Oh, that was just a repeat of the question. Okay.
People ask me that all the time. I don't really envision them clearly. Like they all kind of look like sort of like blurry people to me. Like I can't see like an actual face in my head. So I think that's, I don't use a ton of description in my stories because I like people to just picture what they want. Like I feel like when I'm reading, it's such a bummer when you're picturing a character a certain way and then they have the person, the author describes them and it's like totally different from what you want them to look at and look like, and you're like, now I don't like that guy, like he's not sexy anymore. Because he has a ponytail or something. I don't know. But maybe. So I try to just be vague just so people can picture what they want. And if you want to picture the character looking like, Paul Rudd, if that is your thing or whatever, then that's great. Or, or your boyfriend or whoever, just, it's kind of up to you. Choose your own.
We're going to have
facial features.
A breaking news. Freida McFadden just said her celebrity crush was Paul Rudd.
One of many, but yeah. Who doesn't have a crush on Paul Rudd?
I agree. Crystal is saying, what are some fan theories? I guess, do you pay attention to fan theories about your books or characters that you've seen online? And do you have any in particular that you've loved or hated?
Like what was that?
It says fan theories, but maybe fan fiction. I don't know.
I've never seen any fan fiction. I don't know what fan theories mean, but I mean,
maybe there's some conspiracy theories out there.
Yeah, I've never seen any Housemaid fan fiction. If that exists, I think it would be incredibly cool. Like I know there's like Fourth Wing fan fiction, stuff like that. Yeah. I don't know if it's quite enough of a cult to have fan fiction, but if such a thing existed, I'm there for it.
So Anna from Evergreen Valley College Library is asking, what's the most challenging part of a story to write?
I always say like that kind of 30,000 word mark. That doesn't mean anything to most people, but like when I say that to authors, they're like, yeah.
It's like halfway, right?
Yeah, like you're kind of at that kind of mid halfway. And like my favorite part is like when I can see the end in sight. And I'm like, and I can actually plan out like, okay, these 8 scenes need to happen and then it will be finished. But like when you're kind of at that early middle and you still have a lot to go, and that's the most challenging part. The beginning's easy. The end, I think, is easy. That kind of early middle, I find the hardest part.
early middle. Angela is asking, you have a book coming out in October. Can you talk about that one?
So that one's The Boyfriend.
Okay.
I love this book. It's about a woman who, is looking to find love, doing some dating apps, and she starts to suspect that this guy she's dating might be a serial killer. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a fun book. And I personally love the twist in it. So I hope you guys like it too. I think the more I like the twist, the more readers tend to like it, but I don't know. My real secret to whether a twist is twisty enough is if my mother reads the book and doesn't understand the twist. Like if she finishes it and she's like, what? I don't get this. And I have to spend 10 to 15 minutes explaining it to her. That's a good twist. If she gets it, then it's not twisty enough.
It's not twisty enough. Okay. All right. Well, then Mom is the first reader for you then. Elizabeth from Bucks County Free Library is saying, do you have a hard time separating yourself from your characters after a stretch of writing?
I definitely really lose myself in the characters, but I love it. I love that feeling of just being immersed in a story. When I'm writing, it is all I think about. It's even hard to sleep because I go to sleep thinking about my characters and what they're up to. And that's part of why I write so quickly. It's I can't sleep. I can't get a good night of rest until I finish this book. So I really kind of lose myself entirely in that world.
That's how we all feel reading your books. Oh. So you're putting that into that energy into the book.
Yeah. Thank you.
Danielle from Danbury Library is saying, I love every single one of your books. You have easily become one of my favorite authors. My question is, how do you come up with the storyline of your books? We know that some of that is based off of what you're familiar with and what you do for a living. But what inspires the storyline? And do you base your characters on people you know? Yeah, we got that one.
Yeah, definitely some characters are based on people I know. More of my earlier books, actually. certainly, my women's fiction were based very much on like real experiences. I think as my thrillers have gotten more kind of thrillery and less women's fiction-y, the characters are less based on people I know.
Mm-hmm.
And I forgot what question I was answering. Where we get the idea. Yeah, so the ideas can come from anywhere. Like I was, the last weekend I was at a Melanie Martinez concert at TD Garden in Boston. I took my daughter, and I'm actually a fan of hers, but not as much as the girls in that audience. It was just funny because it was all like these kind of 10 to 16-year-old girls, and then parents kind of sitting down and kind of just looking like okay, how much. And I like her music a lot, but I was definitely very firmly in the camp of people sitting there kind of looking at my watch a little bit. And that like gave me an idea. I was just thinking like middle-aged mom raising teenage children. I'm kind of like, as I'm sitting there, I'm just thinking about how the story would go. And like, so, if a Melanie Martinez concert could inspire a thriller, you just see how it could just come from anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that one will be out in 2026.
Well, I have to write it, but yeah.
Where do you, Kathy from East Baton Rouge Parish Library saying, where do you find inspiration for your books, in particular of how the characters are tortured? Without giving it away, there was one particular scene with the teeth being pulled out, and that was really cringy.
So that's actually a funny story because I really, in that book, as I was writing it, I don't write horror. Like I want to stay in the thriller camp. I don't want to write books that are like gross, like gross out books. Some people love that, but it's just not my thing.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to kind of stay in my wheelhouse. So I was like trying to brainstorm things that somebody could be forced to do as torture, but like not gross. So like, I think we could all imagine really disgusting tortures, like cutting off someone's hand or like, horrible stuff. But I wanted to come up with things that were like torment, but almost more psychological torment.
Mm-hmm.
So in summary, I recruited my whole family to help me come up with ideas. So, not my littlest at the time, although now I absolutely would. But like I remember sitting on the couch with my husband and my teenager, and then like, we have to come up with ideas for things that you could do to torture somebody without it being too gross. And we were all like spitfiring these ideas. So like the three of us came up with the ideas, and I didn't use all of them. They were pretty good ideas, I thought, mostly. Yeah. But that's how I came up with it. It was a family effort. It's a joint effort.
Some of them are just, how did you even come up with them? Like stacking the books on your stomach?
I don't know which one of us came up with that one. Sounds like something I would have come up with, I think.
Yeah, I guess I'd just forgotten how heavy big textbooks were.
Yeah.
Encyclopedias and dictionaries. Because at first I was like, how is that even going to hurt? Just lay there. But
maybe it was all the studying in medical school, like with textbooks that was pre like computers. I'm dating myself. But like having some giant textbook on my lap that I had to memorize, and just like painful in two ways, psychologically and physically.
Like sprain your wrist, just opening it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like before there were electronic medical records, I used to sprain my wrist pulling charts out of racks, like constantly. Like I would wear a wrist brace because I was hurting myself so much.
I did in law school. I did hurt I pulled my back carrying my books improperly, just like on the one shoulder instead of like a whole backpack. And it actually pulled something in my back because all of the weight was on one side.
Well,
So
that makes it. I mean, right now, sneezing pulls my back. So I think that was in Housemaid 3. I was
much
like,
younger then.
we can all relate to that, can't we?
Yeah.
Had some treacherous sneezes. And once I dared to put my pants on, and that was just too much.
Oh yeah, come on. Why would you even try?
Yeah, it was stupid. I don't know what I was thinking.
You're still practicing, but not
So
full time anymore, right?
I actually, so I was for a long time, I was doing both, and I was really like holding on to it. I did not want to leave that job. And I kept, I was part time, but I was still 5 days a week. So I was like half days ish, 5 days a week. And I really wanted to stay. And I knew they kind of needed me at work, and I really didn't want to leave. But there was just like a point where I was just so overwhelmed doing both. And I just was like, I was almost having panic attacks because I just couldn't do it all. And like, I wanted to be that superwoman who was like, I'm working full time, I'm writing books, I've got 2 kids. And I was just, and it was like, and when school started, I couldn't be there for when my kids were asking for homework. And I do a lot of homework, to tell you. I do many hours a day, some nights. So I just wanted to be there for my kids. And I love the writing. I could never give that up. So I just had to make a hard decision. So I told my boss, I said, I'll stay till the end of 2023. I told him, I think during the summer. And I said, I'll give you to the end of the year so you can find somebody else. But I can't be here anymore, as a regular person. But I do still come 1 day a week. To help out and do some vacation coverage. So I'm still very much practicing, but I'm not, it's more a side gig than, it used to be doctor was the job and writing was the side gig. And now they've kind of swapped places.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think too, at some point, as you become you're already super popular. And as you become more and more popular, somebody even asked that earlier, Sharon, have you ever treated any patients who recognized you? You probably become recognizable, you don't think? No?
That, first of all, so I was just talking to someone about this. I was, I recently told 2 friends, I have this little book club. So I told 2 of the women at the book club, I am actually a New York Times bestselling author. And they were like, oh. And I didn't want to tell them who I was. They certainly didn't know offhand. So they're looking at the New York Times bestseller list and they're like, are you Colleen Hoover? Are you Alex McCallides? I was like, no, not any of these people. Are you Lucy Score? No. I mean, they were going through the list, and they finally, I think the last word, they were like, oh, Freida McFadden? Yes, I'm Freida McFadden. They were like, I've never heard of you, but they thought it was cool. They had a lot of questions. I was happy I told them. But I was recently at one of their houses actually bringing one of my books because she wanted to read it. So I brought her the teacher, and she had a friend over, and she says to her friend, oh, she's an author and she wrote this book, and she gives it to the friend. The friend has no idea who I am. She's kind of looking at the book oh, you wrote this? I've never heard of it. So not household name quite. I think, my dream at work was always to walk into a patient's room and to see one of my books on one of their, they have these little trays, to see one of my books on a tray. That's never happened. And sometimes I'll take a peek at their Kindle. No. So I wouldn't say anyone's come close.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, being in the book world, that's super surprising to me because you are a big name. You've been on the New York Times bestseller list forever.
I really think that people don't know the authors who are not in genres that they read.
Yeah, that's true.
And I'd be surprised. I also have a real life writing group. And these are they're all women and they're all very well read. And at one point I was brought up Colleen Hoover, like phenomenally successful author. And like, I think almost nobody knew who she was in the group. And this is like,
Yeah.
very, very famous person.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I find myself saying to some people, like, well, you would know them if you saw the book cover.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe, but I just think authors, it's not like, Paul Rudd,
Right. Back to Paul Rudd.
Authors are a little bit more, and even your favorite authors, like I would have trouble, like I could be working with, say, J.K. Rowling, and I wouldn't know. Like she could be like somebody who works on my floor. The accent might give it away, but like it would be, I think I would have trouble recognizing her.
Yeah.
Or James Patterson, like all of the, household names even, I would never, ever recognize them if I were like a foot away from them.
If I'm being honest, I probably wouldn't even assume that it was Paul Rudd if you were sitting right next to me.
Right. Like,
I would just think you looked like somebody that, yeah, exactly. Amanda wants to comment, Freida, you have a whole group of folks who call themselves Freida Ritas.
That's true. I actually even put it on a shirt.
Oh, that's awesome. I don't know if Amanda knew that.
Because I'm from Boston, and that's how you say it, Freida Rita.
Freida Rita. That's cute. Chris is saying, because psychology is so subjective and unique to the individual, how do you create something that relates to or speaks to the widest possible audience?
I just try to write things that I feel like I am a very generic audience. Like I don't like things that are esoteric. I like if a book gets if I am trying to decide what to read for myself, I look at the Amazon rating and I look at the Goodreads rating, and if it got a high rating, I like it, and if it got a low rating, I usually don't like it. So I am, I think, a great representation of like the average person. So I write things that like I think would appeal to me, and I hope that other people like it. I feel lucky that my taste seems to match up and it somehow seems to work. But I'm just trying to like write things that I would find interesting.
That sounds like a great path, because then ultimately I think it would be better if you're trying to write things that you're not interested in. You're not gonna put as much time and energy in.
Right. I mean, I'm just having fun here. Like this started as a hobby for me, and I still I am determined to have fun. Like if I'm not having fun, then I'll just, what's the point? So I think if I'm having fun, that translates to the book. I think the more fun I'm having when I'm writing a book, the more fun the reader's having when they're reading it.
I agree with that. That's amazing. Sherry is asking, how has your writing evolved, especially after the success of the Housemaid series?
I mean, I think in general, my writing has evolved a lot. Like my plotting has evolved a lot over the years. Like when I look back at my first couple of thrillers, I feel like I could plot so much better now. I actually even went back and rewrote the ending to one of my books, The X, because I was like, oh, no, I could do much better now. So, and it's just, it's a learning process. That's why, when people are writing and they ask for advice, my advice is always write the book and get it out there, because that's how you're going to learn. And I listen to people. Like, I try not to allow myself to be tortured by bad reviews. I try to really listen to it and try to figure out, like, is this something I could learn from? And like, I hope I'm not done growing as a writer. I feel like I want to keep learning and keep changing and doing better.
The more we practice, the better we get.
Yeah.
Natalie at Roxbury Library is saying, you've accomplished many things, broken records, surpassed the unexpected, and just continue to surprise us with your twists and handsome men. With all that being said, what are you most proud of personally and professionally?
Well, personally, I'm most proud of my children. I have to say that, because they're amazing. professionally, I have to say I'm proud of being an author, but I'm also proud of, becoming a physician too. Like that, that was my identity for a long time. And I worked so hard to get there. I was telling someone recently, we did 30-hour shifts at the hospital, and, I worked my butt off. I'm proud of it, and like, what I've done as a doctor. And I'm as an author, I'm proud of, I think, most getting people reading. I think that like makes me the happiest of the things I hear from people. And I get a lot of messages and emails and stuff. When somebody says to me, there was one message I got recently that I really love. This person had a brain injury, and they said they couldn't read for 7 years. They used to love reading, but they couldn't focus on it. And one of my books was the first book in 7 years that they were actually able to focus on and read. And I get a lot of messages like that, like I've never loved reading as an adult, and your books made me love reading. And that is like amazing. I mean, I love to read, and to just give that to someone else, like it just, man, that's the best feeling.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Christina is asking, is there a reason you choose one-word titles? Do you choose the titles? Because you said that the Housemaid is because of your British publisher.
I mean, I picked some of the titles. Recently, it's just, we've sort of just been going in that direction, but I'm not married to it. I do have a lot of 2 or 3 or even 4-word titles in my catalog. I've got Want to Know a Secret. Wow, that's 5 words. So I've stepped out of those. But, I like the simplicity of it. It just becomes, it's almost become like a thing. But if a perfect title occurred to me that didn't have that, like, the blah, I still go for it. Like, I'm not married to it.
I think the one word sound, it lends some ominous.
Yeah, exactly. I like the way it sounds. But again, the title has to work for the book.
Yeah, definitely. That's most important.
Yeah.
Another Christina from Grapevine Public Library saying, are there any talks of movies for the Housemaid series or any others?
Yes. So what am I allowed to talk about? So the rights.
There's just you and I. Nobody.
Yeah, right. Nobody here. The rights for the Housemaid were purchased by Hidden Pictures in conjunction with Lionsgate.
Great.
And they've got a script, and I'm not as sure how much more I can say. So like that's definitely stuff I'm allowed to say. So there's a script, and it's been purchased. Okay. So, or the option has been purchased, I should say. So, but they seem excited to go ahead. So fingers crossed. I am excited. Hopefully it will happen.
Are you going to be involved?
I am not. I mean, I always say to these, producers and stuff, like, I don't know anything. I'm just like, just keep me in the loop. Just tell me who you cast as Enzo, and I'll be happy. Like, just
Paul Rudd. No, I'm kidding.
Paul Rudd. Yeah, I don't know if he'd be right.
I don't think so.
I love him.
Just had to continue with the theme because that was
he's Andrew. So there's also The Coworker was optioned by Sony. And the goal, I believe, is to make a TV series out of it. And they also have a writer who's sounds amazing. So those are 2 kind of in the works.
Okay, that's really exciting.
Yeah,
everybody's got that to look forward to. Somebody asked earlier, and I wanted to come back to it. I'm trying to find it now. I can't find it. I know the question though. Sorry, I just won't be able to say your name. What was your mom's favorite book that you've written? You were talking about her reading your books, so they wanted to know what your mother's favorite book was.
She likes books with like kind of a medical edge. So I think her favorite is Ward D. Although I recently gave her a manuscript that I wrote a couple months ago, and now she says that's her favorite. So this unnamed manuscript is now her favorite because it's slightly based on some things that happened to her. So that's all I'm gonna say. But she also loves The Housemaid. That's a little bit ironic because I was actually afraid to show it to her because she has this kind of fear of being trapped somewhere. So I was scared that she would hate it and it would get in my head. But then I showed it to her and she's like, I love this. Is the best ending of a book I've ever read. So she loved that one too. So.
Good. Jess is saying, I have always been intrigued by the eye on the cover of the Housemaid series. Each cover has a different eye, so it leaves me wondering whose eye does each cover represent?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
I had a feeling.
I was actually holding out all three recently with my family, and I was like, why is that one brown and that one blue and that one's bloodshot and that one the eye is more dilated and that one it's more constricted? I was like, are they on like opioids for one of them? Like what is going on here? So I do not have the answer to that.
I don't know. Yeah, I thought that would be like 50-50. I've talked to some authors who have a lot of say in their covers and other authors that are like, no, nobody even asked me.
I love the cover though. I mean, I remember seeing it, for the first book. I saw that cover and I was like, damn, that was a nice cover. So kudos to whoever designed that cover.
Yeah, they're good covers. I like them. Laura is asking, if you met someone that has never read one of your books, which one would you recommend that they read first?
I think the two The Housemaid probably has obviously been the most popular, and Never Lie is one that people seem to really love a lot. Although this friend of mine I was telling you about, who I told about my books, I gave her The Teacher. Mm-hmm. So, those are, I think, some of the newer ones that are popular. The Housemaid, I think, I got to recommend that just because it's been my most popular by far.
Mm-hmm. The Teacher was just on the New York Times bestseller list.
Yeah, it was actually on for 3 months. It hit number 1 at one point, which I was kind of surprised by, but nice surprise.
Which book, Greg is asking, which book are you the proudest of? Taking out of like, which one would you recommend somebody read? Are you most proud of?
No, I think
they're all kind of your favorite, right, as you're writing them.
It's hard, I really love Never Lie. It definitely came together the way I wanted it to. And I also love The Inmate is another personal favorite of mine. It was another one where I just, like, as I was writing it, I was just so immersed in the characters even more than usual. And like, I was so excited to write it. It came out exactly as I wanted. And it's definitely up there in my favorites.
Mm-hmm. Good. Jennifer is asking, do you continue to read for pleasure while you're writing, or do you pause until you've finished your book?
I usually don't read a lot while I'm actively writing, just because I spend so much time writing. It doesn't leave much time for anything else practically when I'm in that like writing period. So I usually do hit pause on it just for lack of time.
And so that segues to this is the perfect segue to our last question. The time went so fast.
Good.
I love to ask, people always want to know, what books are you currently reading if you're not in a super writing zone, or if you aren't reading anything right now, what do you recommend that everybody runs out to the library and checks out immediately?
So right now I'm reading The Seaside Sisters by Pamela Kelly. It's not a thriller, but it's an awesome book. I'm really enjoying it a lot. So I definitely recommend everyone check that one out.
Okay.
It's a lot of fun. And if we're talking thrillers, I think my recent favorite that I read was Listen for the Lie by, I think, Amy Tintura. It was something I read like during, I had some stress in my life at the time, and I was able to just focus on that book, and it was something I really look forward to. Such a good book. So those are two, a non-thriller and a thriller.
Okay. Well, those both sound great. We'll have to check them out. Thank you so much for joining us today. That was so much fun. Like I said, the hour flew by for me. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your work with us too.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a lot of fun.
Of course. I also want to extend a huge thank you to all of our viewers for tuning into our author talk today. Without your support, none of this would be possible, and we thank you for choosing to spend your time with us. As a reminder, if you scroll down below the live stream video, you can see that resources area, which contains a link to Freida's new book, The Housemaid Is Watching. We look forward to seeing you all again on June 20th when we talk to best-selling author Tiffany Jewell about her newest book, Everything I Learned About Racism I Learned in School. I am Brandon Adler, and thank you for joining us.